Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today's episode is one of pure malicious intent and unbridled evil. For this reason, viewer discretion is heavily advised. Our story begins with a young boy named Andre Martin. Martin, born in Brooklyn, New York, moved to South Florida with his family around the age of 8 years old. There, he met a boy named Michael Hernandez in the 3rd grade at Perrine Baptist Academy. The two fast became best friends, and after graduating, they would also attend the same middle school, the Robert Morgan Educational Center in South Miami-Dade. They would maintain their friendship throughout their youth and would eventually both transfer to Southwood Middle School, where they would end up befriending another student, Jaime Gough. Jaime was an A student in the 8th grade by this time who also stood out for his musical talents. As a member of the Performing Arts Center at Southwood, Jaime was easy to get along with and would eventually become good friends with both Andre and Michael as the three formed somewhat of a trio. And although the friendship dynamic between Andre and Michael was beginning to shift, slowly pulling them apart, Andre still considered Michael his best friend. It was commonplace for the three boys to gather in the teacher's parking area before school and talk about the typical things boys their age would. So on February 2nd, nothing seemed out of place to Andre at first, when the three gathered and Michael told the boys that he had something to show them, but he couldn't show them outside. So the three made their way toward the school as other students gathered outside waiting for the first bell to ring so everyone could enter the building. Normally, students weren't allowed to enter the building before the first bell, but the three boys had found a side door that was left unlocked and entered the building anyway. Once inside, Michael led the way as his friends Andre and Jaime followed to the boys' bathroom on the 2nd floor of the school. It was here where Andre began to feel like something wasn't right. Once all three boys were inside of the bathroom, Michael stopped and took a hat from his backpack and put it on. Andre also took note that Michael was wearing a windbreaker type jacket, although it was considerably warm outside. After securely fixing his hat on his head, Michael invited his friends Andre and Jaime into the very last stall of the bathroom, insisting that he had something to show them. But he wanted to show them one at a time. Jaime seemed almost excited at the idea and volunteered to go into the stall ahead of Andre, but Michael insisted that Andre be the one to go in first. But by this time, Andre had grown suspicious of the whole idea and started to back out entirely. As the boys stood at a standstill of sorts, the first bell of the school day rang out. For the moment, it seemed that whatever Michael had wanted to show his friends would have to wait, as other students were now filtering into the building to begin their school day. Not wanting to be late, Michael took note of the time and asked Andre and Jaime if they would be more cooperative and participate the next day, to which they both agreed. The next day, Andre had conveniently skipped over their planned morning meeting and either forgot about it or simply decided against it because of how he felt the previous day towards Michael and how he was acting. Sometime that morning, as students began to make their way through the building and into their classrooms just before 9 a.m., an announcement rang out over the PA system alerting the students and staff that Southwood Middle School was on an official lockdown. Immediately, there's a panic in the hallways. No one really knows or understands what's going on. Rumors begin to spread quickly as students that have access to their cell phones begin to call their parents. At first, there's rumors of a possible robbery, and rumors of a student with a gun in the hallways. But the actual truth of what had taken place was much worse than any of the parents or students could have ever imagined. Just moments prior to the lockdown, a student made his way to the boys' bathroom before class officially started. Deciding to use the bathroom on the 2nd floor, he entered, noting a small black book bag sitting on the floor near the entrance. Walking inside, another student walked past him, leaving out. As the student walked further into the bathroom, he could see small droplets of what appeared to be blood along the bathroom floor. Hesitantly, he followed the trail to the last stall, where he decided to peek under the stall's door to see if he could see anything. And unfortunately, he did see something, and it would change his life forever. There was blood everywhere, In fact, there was a large pool of blood forming all over the floor, and a pair of feet dangled down from the toilet. Seeing this, he immediately ran out of the stall to alert one of the nearby security guards that someone appeared to be bleeding inside of the bathroom. But the guard completely brushed him off and told him to get to class. But the student told his friend instead, and together they went back to the bathroom and prepared themselves for what they knew they had to do next. Together, slowly, they opened the stall door and bore witness to the terrible scene before them. There was in fact a body there, and it was that of 14-year-old Jaime Gough. And he lay chest first across the toilet, with both of his feet hanging down over the other end, and his bloodied head hung over the other side of the toilet. Beneath his head was a pair of glasses that lie in the pool of blood gathered on the floor. One of the boys shouted out to him, and once they received no response, the boys ran immediately this time in a frenzied panic, and as they did, the same security guard this time noticed the startled and panicked look on the boys' faces and realized that something must be wrong. So he entered the bathroom, and once he saw the terrible scene, alerted the police and assistant principal. As the authorities quickly made their way to the grisly scene, Michael Hernandez was in class, but his teacher noticed something was off. Since he'd been in class, he had asked to be excused to the restroom 3 separate times. After returning the 3rd time, he did not leave out again. In the meanwhile, after alerting the police and assistant principal, the security guard made his way back to the bathroom, but noticed that in the short amount of time he'd been gone, that someone had changed the position of Jaime's body. He was now lying face up on the stall's floor with his arms spread. And in this position, he could clearly see that his neck had absolutely been shredded. As the lockdown ensued, the boys who'd found Jaime told the authorities and school personnel of who they'd seen leaving the bathroom. The student was identified as none other than Michael Hernandez. Michael's teacher was the one to approach detectives on the scene first with some very interesting details. She noticed that he had a red-colored stain on his shirt, and that she could instantly tell it was blood. By this time, she'd learned of what had happened to Jaime and led detectives to her class where Michael was now sitting as if nothing was wrong. The teacher explained to the detectives that Michael had gone to the restroom twice before the first bell, and once the school entered lockdown, requested to go a 3rd time, in which he was escorted by the security guard to the restroom before returning to class. Michael was then asked how he'd gotten the blood on his shirt, and he told the detectives that he had a nosebleed from a door that had been swung open and hit him in the face. But when they couldn't find any visible injuries as a source for a nosebleed, they asked him again, and this time he had another story to tell. He said that he'd gone to the bathroom, but when he got there, that there was another student leaving out that informed him there was someone bleeding in the last stall. He noticed blood all over the floor, he said, and decided to bend down and look under the stall. He said that's when his shirt had touched the floor and gotten the blood transference. He did admit that he recognized the student inside of the stall as his friend Jaime Gough, but he returned to class without saying anything anyway. A search of his black backpack yielded clue to the actual truth of what Michael was doing that morning. Inside, they found latex gloves, a red windbreaker jacket that both had blood on them, and in a secret compartment he cut out inside of the bag was a hidden knife. He was eventually detained and escorted to the police station, where later that evening he would openly and fully admit to being the one who had killed Jaime Gough in the boys' bathroom stall.
Why did you make the suggestion to Jamie to go inside the school today?
I was planning to murder him. I got him into the stall by saying, look, I have something to show you. So I got him into the stall, and I told him to turn around because I wanted it to be a surprise. I was talking to him, and I told him, all right, now I have to put my hand over your mouth.
Okay.
And so I did, and I lifted his neck up. I took the knife out, and I proceeded to slit his throat.
Police were initially shocked that Michael was so open and willing to talk with them about what had transpired that morning. More than that, he seemed almost excited to tell them every little detail. Excited to the point where they had to repeatedly tell him to slow down during his confession. But everything they wanted to know, Michael would be forthcoming with information. He said that his plan to murder his best friends began about a week prior. That's right, I said friends, as in both Andre and Jaime. You see, Michael had planned to murder both of his friends that day, not just Jaime. Over the past couple of years, Michael had begun to develop a fascination with horror movies, and more specifically, serial killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. This fascination had grown so violently strong that he was no longer satisfied with reading about serial killers. He wanted to be one. And so on that day, he had planned to start with his two best friends. He told the detectives how just one day prior, he had tried to lure both of the boys to the handicapped bathroom stall, but that he was unsuccessful because Andre backed out and didn't want to cooperate at the last minute. The detectives asked him why he'd chosen that particular stall, and he told them it was because it was the furthest away, and because it was designed for the handicap, which meant that it had the most room for him to move freely. He told them that on that morning, he lured his friend Jaime into the stall by telling him he had a surprise to show him. And once they were inside, he told Jaime to turn around and face the wall and to close his eyes. As he followed every direction to the letter, Michael slipped on a pair of gloves, a hat, and pulled a 4-inch knife from his jacket. Jaime did take notice of Michael slipping on the gloves and inquired about it, to which Michael responded that they just felt comfortable.
Did Jamie say or do anything? Did he put up a struggle?
Yes, he did. He turned around after I did that. He asked me not to kill him. So I told him, okay, I'm not going to if you cooperate.
Okay.
Which was a lie.
Right.
And so I realized that the stall door was open, so I locked it.
Yes.
And then I turned him around again and proceeded to stab him.
Do you think what you did is right or wrong?
No, I don't.
Well, what don't you think?
I think it is neither right, but I don't think it was wrong.
Do you know what you did is wrong?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Once turned around, he suddenly began stabbing Jaime repeatedly from behind. So at this point, the detectives asked him if Jaime fought back, and he revealed that once he started, Jaime had turned to him with his hands up trying to defend himself, and pleaded with Hernandez not to kill him, to which Michael replied that he wouldn't if he just turned around, which Jaime did. And once this happened, Michael would go in to finish the kill by stabbing his friend in the neck and cutting his throat. And as he detailed to the police his sadistic plan, they would come to learn that Andre and Jaime weren't first on his list. Detectives would release 2 official documents from Michael's journal that was collected where he'd written down in detail what his plans were. The first person on his kill list was actually supposed to be his little sister, but for reasons unknown, that day he'd chosen Andre and Jaime to die first instead. Also written down are the demented words where he says to thank God once his plan had been completed. And for me, this is a small sample size into the twisted mind of a psychopath. Another disturbing moment of the interview is when they asked him why he'd chosen to murder his best friends, and Jaime in particular. His response is chilling.
Why did you choose Jamie, your friend?
He was the easiest out of anybody because he would have followed me because we're such good friends.
He knew he held the trust of Jaime completely and used it to manipulate him in every way. If you have children, please teach them to trust their instincts like Andre did. Teach them that not everyone who claims to be their friend has the best intentions for them. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've ever encountered. Jaime Gough was a beautiful and talented soul who was robbed of everything he would have eventually became because his best friend decided on a whim that his life was expendable. It was found during the autopsy that Jaime Gough was stabbed over 40 times, with the last cut severing his jugular vein completely. During his interview, Michael also revealed that the 3rd time he'd returned to the bathroom was when he changed the positioning of Jaime's body and lied him on the floor. His reasoning for returning was to make sure that he was dead. This is what a true psychopath looks like. In 2008, Michael was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Jaime and the attempted murder of his best friend, Andre Martin. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that juveniles could not be automatically convicted to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole, and a new sentencing was granted. During that sentencing in 2016, Hernandez first appeared apologetic as he cried in front of a jury over his past offenses. But he then testified that he had an appreciation for death metal music after prosecutors produced evidence that he'd been speaking with a pen pal about serial killers and that he kept a journal with people that he wanted to kill, including his sister.
Right now.
I just wanted her, I just wanted her to like me. So I said whatever I could say to get that sort of reaction.
New at noon, the man convicted of killing his best friend in a middle school bathroom 12 years ago, taking to the stand just moments ago, getting emotional.
Michael Hernandez is testifying in his resentencing hearing, and Local 10 News reporter Leanne Morahone is in the courtroom for that testimony. She joins us live from Miami. Sounds very emotional in there.
Oh, Christy and Constance, a huge surprise. Michael Hernandez taking the stand in his own resentencing hearing. In that soundbite you just heard, he was referring to a pen pal that he had while he was in the prison. They communicated by phone and also in writing. She was addressing some comments that he made to her. They would talk about serial killers and really disturbing things that you wouldn't really want to hear from someone who is in prison for murder. And he says that his excuse for that was that she seemed interested in it, so he figured he would just play along and tell her what he thought she wanted to hear. Now this is him again. As we mentioned, he did take the stand today for his resentencing hearing. His attorney Manny Hernandez guiding him through that first part of testimony. He first started out by apologizing to Jaime Gough, his victim, as well as Jaime Gough's family, and also to another friend of his who he had planned to kill the day before Gough died, but that friend never took the bait. He also testified yesterday. He also talked about the type of music that he likes, explaining that he has a intellectual appreciation for death metal music. Here is a snippet of some of that part of the testimony.
You talk about some very disturbing things with Brittany.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you talk about serial killers.
Yes, sir.
You talk about violence.
Yes, sir.
Why?
I was very nervous, leading up to talking to her. I never talked to, a female over the phone. So I didn't know what to talk about. My life as being, incarcerated, it's very mundane. So I tried to think about what could I talk about? What could I, fill the conversation up with? And I knew that she, because the way she reached out to me, and, various things she had said in her letters, that she had an interest in crime.
Michael hadn't changed at all, and the 3rd District Court of Appeal ruled that his continued interest in violent music and lyrics, replicating the horrific acts he'd committed against his friend, were directly relevant to his lack of remorse and indifference to the suffering of his victims and their families. This led to them finding that Michael was not rehabilitated and upheld his life sentence. On April 21st of 2021, Michael Hernandez died in prison at the Columbia Correctional Institution near Jacksonville from an apparent heart condition. Andre Martin, the intended second victim of Michael Hernandez, who narrowly escaped death, would go on to live a full life, and the events from that day would lead him to become a sworn officer of the Miami-Dade County just 13 years after the death of his friend.
Well, Calvin, Detective Andre Martin offers his condolences to both families. He tells me that he almost became one of Michael Hernandez's victims. That, along with the fact that he knew Jaime Gough very well, are part of the reasons why he became a police officer.
I really don't have many words for his passing. It doesn't bring me joy. It doesn't bring me any solace or relief. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't bring back Jamie. The gravity of the situation becomes more and more apparent to me in adulthood than it did when I was just 13 years old. I come to terms with the fact that I could have lost my life that day. The impact is exponential.
That day shaped him. Knowing that he could have been one of Hernandez's victims is part of the reason why he became a police officer.
The deep dive into law enforcement because of this case, the depositions, the interviews with detectives, and just the proximity to law enforcement really inspired me to become a police officer.
When the parents of Jaime heard of his passing, they responded saying that Hernandez's death was sad and that it did not bring them any peace or solace. They instead felt sadness and empathy for Michael's parents because they understood what it meant to lose a son. Even after the brutal murder of their son at the hands of a sadistic psychopath, they still somehow held compassion in their hearts. I pray that they truly find the peace that they so deserve. What happened to Jaime Gough on the morning of February 3rd, 2004 was truly the unthinkable.